Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. Those of you just coming in, good to see you. We had an unexpected but well appreciated break today in the Karen Reed trial, and you all are going to have to deal with a very energized bear. I actually slept 7 hours straight. Don't let it scare you. I mean, be a little afraid. It's been a while since a fully charged bear or Claire has been anywhere. So I will apologize straight out that today is just going to be me. No graphics, no lovely little PowerPoint or any of that kind of stuff. I didn't do anything like that for you. What I did do is concentrate on all the facts and evidence and get a good grip on what's going to happen in the trials that are upcoming and the hearings specifically this week for three of the biggest cases that we are covering, not Karen Reed. So I've also been doing my due diligence with a little bit of the P. Diddy trial. I can't wait to bring you all up to date tomorrow with that. I want to give a shout out to a friend that just made my life so much easier. Like anybody, hey Arnold, if you're listening, oh my God, thank you. Because using some of these new tools for doing research and pulling everything together has made a bear's life really easy. I don't have to spend hours finding out what to read or where to read. I can actually get the facts a lot quicker and form my opinions, get to read the real documents, go for the real opinions. It's really a time saver. So thanks for the heads up on some of these programs. Um it's really been great. Hey Pete, yes, I'm de-stressed. Yeah, I slept so good for a change. Really did. Yeah. Thank you, Maggie. I appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out over there at Twitch. Bless you. Thanks very much. Hey, Grace. Hey, Jean. Good to see you guys too. I'm not trying to miss anybody or skip. I just want to get this. I'm so excited to be doing this because it's been Karen Reed nonstop, day in and day out. It just not to forget about the other 22 cases that are on the roster. It's actually a breath of fresh air. So there are three. Hey, Mrs. Cassandra, that we want to talk about. Three that we want to talk about tonight. And I'll give you the choice which one first. Don't fight, don't shout, just put it in the chat. We'll randomly choose. We have three of the biggest cases that are coming up to trial. You've all heard much, much lately about Bryan Kohberger, right? Yes, well, there's a lot to talk about there. And unfortunately, I need to put Lori Vallow Daybell back in your face. You thought we were done. We covered that trial. She was guilty. She got the verdict. But we're not done because there was the second trial to deal with and a huge miss after the results of the first trial that we got to deal with, that we're going to talk about. And then there's a case that not everybody covers out there that is I am very interested in because it's very local to me. Going to be handled right here in the courthouse in my hometown, right here. I live in central New Jersey, in the central Monmouth County, right near the courthouse for the county. And Paul Caniero will be going on trial. It's September 8th. Okay, that's one of the updates. They moved it again. And that has been going on since 2018. Okay, I can't wait for this one to be finished with finally. Well, there's a lot going on in that one also. So you got three to choose from. You got Lori Vallow Daybell. You got Bryan Kohberger for the Idaho 4. And we got Paul Caniero for the Coltsnick family massacre. I hear there is no central Jersey. You're either north or you're south. I'm living proof it ain't true. It just isn't so, Pete. Just breathe in the air around the bear and you will see Central Jersey exists. Living embodiment of it. The best of the north and the south, all in one. Right here on the border. It's not a rumor. Look at me. I'm right here. You can hear me. I'm very north and very south at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, Twitch is a little rough for those that aren't used to it, Maggie. Thanks so much. Though I do appreciate. Oh, you know what, Maggie? I thought that was you. Was that you over there? Or was it not? I don't know. The names, I mean, the beginning name is the same, but you never know. Oh, I'm an aristocrat. Well, thank you. I'm gonna choose to take that as a compliment. I'll use my South roots and take it as a compliment and not think you're dissing me, that my North roots would tell me so. How's that, T? Now stop it. We got to get on track here. All right. I only see one vote, and it's from my boo, Mrs. Cassandra, and she wants to talk about Bryan Kohberger. So that's where we're going to go first. Let me get my research pad open and let's dive in to what's going on there. Just to bring you all up to date, I assume anybody watching me with the hashtag Bryan Kohberger already knows what he's charged for, already knows it's a death penalty case. I will tell you that it's still a death penalty case. Try as the defense has to get that taken off the table. Last ditch effort was, he's autistic and you can't really use the death penalty because the jury is going to judge him harsher than they do anyone else because of his stance and his the way he talks and the way he looks and his mannerisms. But that didn't fly because unless the only way to remove it for that would be to call it a mental health disorder, and it's not. Okay, can it be a mitigating or aggravating factor? Yes, it can, but it's not a reason to toss the death penalty. And they'll have to deal with that with the jury as it comes because they've been trying the defense, but it's not really you know coming into it. Also, we have to worry about how did he get diagnosed for autistic, who says so. And one of the big issues in the Kohberger case right now is a mental health evaluation. The state wants their own. If the defense is going to keep throwing this kind of stuff out there, well, they ask for it. They have their mental health people looking at him, looking for ways to get him out of the death penalty or find some reason why sentencing should be softer for this individual. Then why can't the state ask for a mental health evaluation to find out if maybe, perhaps, there's not that much there? Maybe there's more there. Does he have some tendencies that would actually be in support of him committing this crime? I mean, what's fair is fair, yeah? Well, anyway, the defense opened that door. Now they got to deal with it. So what they're going forth back and forth right now between both sides, the state and the defense, is who gets to be there for these evaluations, who will do these evaluations. And Judge Hippler needs to lay that all out. I have to look at the formal ruling, but I do believe he is allowing the mental health evaluation and that the defense will have to make Bryan Kohberger will have to make himself available to this evaluation and to cooperate with them at least. Or, we'll see how he does. And, and that, of course, he can be represented and they can be present because it will become part of the evidence. So it's probably better if the defense is present. But about who gets to mitigate the questions and who gets to lead with the experts, well, if it's the state's experts, then they have every right to let their expert go forward with their point of view and what they want to find out. Well, the defense kind of wants to use it to soften the blow and wants to put their own questions forth. I'm going to see what Hippler says, but I believe he's going to let the state's expert do what they want because he's a state's expert and then advise the defense, well, you've already hired your own experts. So put that forward separately, or do it on cross-exam. You get to be there. Oh, sure. At least that's what I feel about it. I'm not Judge Hippler, though. I'm just definitely not Judge Hippler. Let me just see. I know this is a topic, Yes, which also begs the question of when. Was it a lifelong issue? I do know that the parents are on the state's list of witnesses, and that brings up another ruling. Thank you for tripping my trigger there of memory, Jin, because another issue that came to light that was settled was whether or not the parents, as his support group and family, could stay in the courtroom during the trial because they are on the state's witness list. And the judge did decide that it is probably better for them to be there, that it's not going to hinder their testimony that much in regards to what it is, and the state can deal with it as it happens. Perhaps the state wants to put them on earlier rather than later because the judge does feel that it's not worth denying Bryan Kohberger his support system. He's the defendant. He's not guilty yet. He's accused, and he has rights, and his support system's one of them. So that came to a head there, and they will be in the courtroom for the whole trial. Hey, Shill. So we got that one. But it's a part of when he was diagnosed. Like, I don't know. I'm sure some of what happened in the course of arrest and the finding of evidence was at the parents' home. Some of the course of events, him calling his father in the time frame after the after the murders happened, it kind of all fits. So there's things that they can attest to, things that happened at their house that they were witness to. You know, also, the one traffic stop, he was with his father, actually driving back and forth and on vacation. It's not uncommon that they're part of the testimony. It doesn't necessarily mean they've got incriminating evidence against him. It is foundation for the state to bring them in, and it's collaborating with the state to bring them in. There are things they can't deny, time frames and stuff like that. So it's not like they're against Bryan, but the state will use them for foundation for a lot of things that did occur, because it was at their house and with them. She'll says, "Woohoo! 3 years now, and somehow you've managed to not boot me for being annoying. Why would I do that? I mean, I am annoying AF. Is it not that the first thing I tell everybody? I know this about myself. I wouldn't boot you. I wouldn't boot you, and you're not annoying. You've been a valid supporter and a good sense of strength for me, just to know the consistency of having somebody here who hasn't tossed me aside like yesterday's news yet. It's rather comforting. So thank you for that, Shill. Pete says, for me, I don't care if his family, albeit for being witnesses that entry into the court, just like Buster. Exactly. Buster was there the whole time, and he was a witness, and so was his brother, right? And they pulled him up to the witness stand, and everybody else. Sometimes, it has to be open court. But it became an issue back and forth. The thing with the Kohberger hearings is that everything becomes an issue back and forth. Everything. Okay, we did get a change of venue. We do have some things going on that make it a little more difficult. I mean, Ann Taylor must be careful what she asked for. It's much harder to get the hearings together, Nope, we never will. You're talking about in the Murdoch trials. We'll never hear what happened in that one I recall with Mom after the murders, in my opinion. Oh, the morning after. No, we won't. We don't know what Buster knows. Exactly. We're never going to know. And did you see, Pete, that he just got married recently? Was that not sweet? Yeah. In a way, I'm happy to see him moving on with his life. He's still got that one lawsuit he's pursuing, but we'll see. Oh, you mean BK? Yes, that's another thing. He did. The first thing that happened was he called his father, and they were going on. He was having a vacation, and they were getting ready. So, like, that's what the defense is trying to say. But the state is using it as a traumatic event call, like, just needing to ground himself and everything. I mean, they are trying to build a very solid case, and there's a lot of information that was leaked in the recent documentary that we didn't know before, in which, well, just a word of caution. I watched the documentary. It is too, but Dateline has a tendency to be very sensationalized. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't a good piece of work. Yes, it was, absolutely. But I can't take all of it as solid until I know where the sources are coming from, because they talked about a lot of things that are not public knowledge yet, that have not been presented in the case. And I'm like, what? So everywhere there's all this stuff about, oh, this was leaked and oh, that was leaked. It's just a word of caution. We watch it, but just know that you're watching somebody's analysis of the case with information and everything. And not all the sources are being listed. Some of them are completely being hid and saying they won't talk about. We don't know where some of it's coming from, so you can't like take it all as like facts. Remember, just like I always warn everybody, it's not facts and evidence in case until it's entered into court. Because even what we hear in the motions back and forth and we see out there as what they're going to use as evidence, it's not evidence or a fact of the case until it hits court. Once it's in, it's in. Okay, and then we use it to see if the justice system is going to say guilty or not guilty, because that's what the jury sees, and they're the ones who get to decide. Yeah, and you're right, Pete. That interesting call just a few hours after the incident, the alleged incident against Bryan Kohberger. He was talking with his father. Yeah, and then they were visiting shortly after. It's interesting. It's interesting how the defense is tying in his autism as a reason to get rid of some of the evidence too, or some of the innuendo around the gathering of evidence. Like when they showed up, the police showed up in Pennsylvania in the middle of the night and thought that Bryan Kohberger was destroying evidence. The defense says no, he was just dealing with the quirk that he has for cleanliness and order, and like he got obsessed about something. You know, it is a new twist in a case. I've not seen it used this way before, not as prominently. And so I'm curious as to how it's going to go. I'm curious if it's true first. I want to see evidence that it's true. Just because somebody has certain mannerisms does not mean they're on the spectrum. And I've noticed a trend in society in general, especially out here on the socials, for people to call something autistic with no real knowledge of whether it is or not. Just because it looks odd or different. Not everything that's odd or different from the way people normally do it makes you autistic. Autistic is a true neurodivergency in the way people think and process. And it is a diagnosis after everything else has been eliminated. Saying that Bryan Kohberger is autistic without actually seeing a report saying so is just as easy as saying he's a sociopath. Yep, I said it because that's the other side of the scale. That's what I'm looking at. Are these behaviors natural because he is autistic? Or is it because he's a cold killer and a sociopath? Because there are plenty of serial killers who sat in that chair and looked just like Bryan Kohberger when they stared forward, when they didn't react, when they had such a non-pulsed attitude about the whole thing. Yeah, I know I'm going to get some heat for that one. Well, that is the facts of it. We don't know until we see where this actually is coming from. Yeah, Pete, I agree. It's almost true, but it's not true because, after all, it is a television show. And I get what you're saying. And they can't say where they get the information or what they know because then their sources will dry up, right? Like they can't be, they're not, because of what it is, Dateline, a television show thriving on insider information that nobody else has. If they want to keep that going, they can't actually say where they're getting all the information, which makes us naturally, myself, knowing how I am, just a little doubtful because I don't know the source. So I'm intrigued by what they said, and it makes sense. A lot of it pieces together. It does. But we'll see where it pans out. I do thank you for the link because it was fascinating to watch. I really enjoyed it. Yes, Mrs. Cassandra, I do agree that what they're leaking about Ethan in regards to the condition of his body and what may have happened does seem to be a bit personal. Um, but is it personal because of Ethan who he was? Or is it personal because it's the type of killing that was very oriented against who Bryan was, and that Ethan was killed that way just because he was a male involved in the situation, and not really anything he did or because of him in himself as a person. Like it's very intriguing to me that it just like I watch too much I watch Mindhunter and all that stuff. I read the FBI profiles, like I'm fascinated by this stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going in my head in regards to this case alone. Um the fact that it's a death penalty case makes it extremely serious. It's in Idaho, which is open access, and yet it's one of the most cases that has more things hidden behind the scene and closed up than ever. And yet Idaho is one of the most open access transparency states there are. It's up there as a case of interest. Every filing, but you go to open them and they've been sealed. They've been sealed. So it's kind of like, scratch my head. We eventually get a lot of it. And Hitler, George Hitler, when he took over the case as a breath of fresh air, he was like, stop talking so much. I don't want 20 experts for a damn hearing. Put it in a motion, do the work. And then, like, stop throwing spaghetti at the wall. If you got something to say it. And he's got no patience for this. And he did want everything open and transparency. And he opened a lot. And he did solve a lot. He pulled the IgG, genealogy question. And we did tackle a lot of that. You know, you're right. I need my sources there, Pete. You're absolutely right. Well, Hitler's been pretty straightforward and he doesn't like nonsense. But now he's even sealing stuff because stuff keeps coming up that violates certain people's rights or there's protective orders. It's insane. And he doesn't like the media coverage, everything getting leaked out there before it happens. So we've got a hearing coming up and they're going to be addressing a few things because there's a couple of stuff just still left open that they have to get to. We're coming to trial in August, and so we really do need to figure out what's going on. So in going over everything, the things that are still open is that recently the defense has filed motions challenging, now that they know the DNA evidence is coming in and that the IgG is going to be okay in how they identified Bryan Kohberger, now they're challenging the evidence of the spot DNA that they found on the knife. Now they're challenging how it was handled, how the DNA samples were done, including a claim that the knife sheath was contaminated during collection. Okay, maybe. Well, if it was, how did Bryan's DNA get in there during collection? Really? Prosecutors have submitted all the lab reports and the chain of custody logs to rebut all of these assertions. And so we're expecting that perhaps George Hitler will actually give us a ruling on this at the pretrial hearing coming up on whether this DNA evidence is going to be entered in. Because if this doesn't come in, well, we've got a lot of circumstantial evidence after that. This is hardcore evidence. This is physical DNA. Trace as it is. It's a knife sheath. It's a knife sheath, a sheath that matches the kind of knife that more than likely caused all the injuries. That is going to be testified to whether or not it could by the medical examiner and those that do crime scene investigation. So if we throw out the DNA to that knife sheath, the knife sheath, well, that's a big piece, right? So I don't blame them for going after it. And isn't it a common defense tactic, and rightly so, that you attack the investigation, you attack how they got the DNA. The incriminating evidence must go. It better be airtight. You better have dotted every I and crossed every T, or we're going to get it the hell out of here because it looks bad. It looks bad for our client. And that's their job. And that's what they're doing. So you can't really. I don't have as much distaste for that one as I do this autism spectrum a shield that they're trying to put out there, because I think it could just as well be the other. Like they're trying to go against all of these stalking allegations because people are coming out of the woodwork to talk about how he could have been stalking and this could have been planned. And if it's premeditated, that kind of adds towards the death penalty, doesn't it? Like that's another notch towards like that being, if he's found guilty, they'll sentence. So they're trying to remove all of that ability by explaining these behaviors and all. He's not really stalking. He just doesn't understand social skills. And the state's going to come back with, but he's a PhD. Like he's in the PhD program and he's got a bachelorate and he's very well educated. He's a very smart man and he's able to write and articulate himself very well. Like if you read his papers and stuff. I have not heard anybody talk about too much about his conversations, except for the defense to say that he gets stuck with language and he doesn't necessarily express himself the proper way. But like, yes, Pete's typing it out. Just might as well just as likely be characteristics of a sociopath. And I get that. And that's the balance of this trial. And nobody's really talking about it, are they? Because they're afraid by me saying sociopath, that I'm slamming a whole community. And I would challenge anybody knowing my history and knowing my connection to the autism community in my own personal life that I do every single day and how I speak and conduct myself. I challenge anybody to say that that's what I'm saying, because that is not it. That is just the facts of the case, that it could be one or the other. And just because, even if he does has autism, what kind of shield is that? Now, there are legal precedents that has to be actually put forward here. It is a very interesting angle of this case, because if he does have autism, what type of legal protections are there? None. None. So far. Autism, as a matter of fact, is not diagnosed as a mental disorder. Almost all legal protections for people being overcharged for conditions that are out of their control fall under the mental health category exceptions. Am I wrong? Please correct me if I am, because I don't want to be, but I don't want to be attacked for bringing up the issue either. It is not done to hurt anyone. It is not done in a disparaging way. It is the facts of this case, because a lot of what they represent as being these traits are also the traits of a sociopath serial killer that many have gone on trial before and been accused of. Yes, Jenny was going for a PhD in criminology. It was one of his passions. He wanted to be a law enforcement officer. He has a fascination for it, you know. Yeah, thank you, Shil. Mm. Yep. If they do, Pete, if they do actually succeed in this, it will actually affect the death penalty throughout the country. Those states that still have it, it will become an argument, a very prominent argument throughout, and it'll be a new standard to judge things by. That's what's fascinating to me about it. This case can actually change law. This case can actually create law, change law, inspire law. Yeah. There are some states that are adamant that the death penalty needs to happen. But is it very popular anymore? I'd have to say no. People bring up the moral issue. Other people bring up the cost issue. It's a battle all the time, and there are definitely some lines there. You know, but But Idaho, even with all of their problems, still has the death penalty, even though they have so many people on death row that they can't even initiate it with, because they have problems getting the drugs. Because even pharmaceutical companies aren't willing to sell the drugs because they get labeled with being supporters of the death penalty, even though it's a free market. Come on. But and so they instituted the firing squad as an option in Idaho, and we shall see. Yep. Yeah, if you ask people all over the country, like, it's not as popular as it was. New York doesn't have it anymore. So, some pretty hard states on law still don't have it. True, Maggie, that could be it. That his communication skills to writing are so much better than his speaking skills. And everybody comes like that. Everybody has a different balance of it, one or the other, one being better than the other, some being more balanced. I get that. It's the fact that they're pointing it out, and whether or not that can actually be a shield against repercussions for actions. you know and also, for me, it sets a precedent. If they're worried so much about the outcome of this trial ahead of time, I think they're pretty sure that the evidence is going to lean towards his guilt. There's been a lot of effort of the defense for the outcome of guilty and how it will be handled. And I don't blame them for thinking about it ahead of time, because it's a very serious case and they should put a lot of effort into it. Well, bringing this angle into it also, I'm just like, it makes me tilt my head a little bit, like, like the little, Scooby Doo, like, row, what? Hmm? Well, anyway, that hearing is going to be any day, and I will actually have a video up. I will record some of it and do some commentary for it, and we will put it in the playlist so it's there for everybody to keep track. But I want to discuss like some of these issues that are still outstanding, in regards to it, in that being one of them. We've got new people added to the prosecution team. We had new people added to the defense team. You know, yeah, quizzical puppy look, Scooby Doo's Scooby Snacks. You guys get it? You know what I'm talking about? Like, it just made me think. Like, huh? What? Hmm. A whole big coming from me. Yes, that's it, Maggie. And that's why, Maggie, this is it right here. There may be other issues related to mental health. Exactly. And this is why the state is fully valid in asking for their own evaluation. And of course, because it's mental health, we will see none of it until it comes into trial, because that's the one thing that gets, excuse me, that gets protected in the courts, like, immediately, is anything to do with anybody's personal mental health or medical issues. It'll be sealed right away. Yeah, Pete. And they're also like, we can't see it. They have some of the most circus type trials that in existence, and we don't get to go inside and watch. We have to get it from the reporters who come out later and tell us about it, or from the statements that get released. But I'm going to do my best. I got some really good information from the federal New York trial on P. Diddy, and I will be doing 2 streams a week, keeping people up to date on that one. Tomorrow will be the first one at 9 o'clock. It's, speaking of other streams, while I have a moment, my friend Christopher is doing an absolutely amazing series right now on the history of of certain political processes, that actually affect us in society. And one of them is the racism issue and getting radicalized and all of this. And he's doing this series. He's got some great interviews on there. He's got another stream coming up Monday. I do believe it is at 8 o'clock Eastern. And I get the privilege of seeing some of this ahead of time and discussing these things with Christopher. I think he's one of those friends that has ideals and notions. He's much smarter than I am, but he has a way of expressing things and having conversations that we all can understand, while having a strong opinion about something. He goes into the history of how things get to where they are, and what is actually influencing, and what we may or may not have fallen victim to. And he kind of has a way of looking at the other side of it too, to make it very interesting in addressing the subjects that people don't often want to talk about in calm, clear ways without judgment. I just recommend that you give him a view if you have some time. Here's the link to one of his interviews that he did recently. But the video for Monday will be coming up on there soon. That's his. You can find his channel this way also. But I think it's worth exploring. They're not very long. Yep. In And you know me, I like to promote things that stimulate conversation. And if it makes me think about anything, then I want to share it with you guys, because it just might make you guys think about things in a different way. Mm. Yes, Mrs. Cassandra, the New York case for P. Diddy is a wild one. And I'm covering it for you, boo. So I hope you enjoy tomorrow night's segment, because I'm all in on this one. It's gonna be a wild one for sure. Yeah, Pete, some people are and some people aren't. I mean, when we covered Chad Daybell, the death penalty was a big topic of conversation, and we all had a conversation about it all during the trial afterwards. It is worthy of conversation. There's pros and cons. I think everybody has a valid point about it on each side. But I also think it's up to each state and their constituents. I do believe that the federal government had the right idea. They didn't outlaw it nationally. It's up to each state to decide. Since they have to rule their judicial system, it's up to them to have control over how they will actually do the penalty and the consequence. They should have just as much control of that, you know? So there are plenty that are and aren't. I see good on both sides of that argument. I can understand it. I think I lean more towards the option of having it available, but I am not really secure in the system to the mistakes that get made. You know what I mean? I mean, I've seen people get released with DNA evidence 20 years later. So on that part, I hedge that innocent people will be put to death. The unlikelihood is small, but the fact that even one person would die uh, as an innocent, that bothers me. You know, I mean, I have to be honest about it. It bothers me, but I do think it's an option that should stay available if the states want it. Yep, we're gonna do Lori Vallow next. Thank you for the notch there, Mrs. C. Lori Vallow, guilty. All three conspiracy to commit murder in the first trial in Idaho for Tylee, JJ, and for Tammy Daybell. Now in Arizona, guilty conspiracy to commit murder of her ex-husband Charles Vallow with her brother Alex Cox. Well, last time we talked, oh yeah, we done with BK. Just tune in because I am going to do the hearing. It's coming up in the next couple of days, unless you have questions. I didn't mean to cut you guys off from BK so short. If you have a question, put it out there. I'll still answer it. Like, this is your stream as much as mine, guys. It's going to be about the three cases, and if we get off track, we get off track. If you have a question, put it in there. Well, going on to Lori Vallow, there's been an answer from the state, okay, in regards to her motion to get a new trial because she was convicted guilty. Not too long did they deliberate. One of the problems being a juror made an out statement about perhaps knowing, not perhaps knowing, let's call a duck a duck. He literally said, I was thinking about it last night on my drive home that she'd be in jail for 3 life sentences. And that was the day before the verdict, if it's last night, because it was that morning or that afternoon when he walked out of the court after looking up all the details about her and made that statement. Granted, this is going to be the state's pushback, and Trina K did. She doesn't feel it should be tossed because of the juror's misstatement, because there are plenty other statements the juror made repeatedly on the same day within minutes of this conversation that said he did not know about it. Perhaps he did misspeak and got a little confused about all the information he had just read, because once they turned in their verdict stream, everybody was on their phones looking up Lori Vallow. Every single juror then found out everything, and they were shocked and dismayed and a little disappointed they didn't know any of this, but they understand why. Okay? And so all of this information hit them at once. So if he misspoke, he misspoke. So Trina K's argument for the state of Arizona is that there is plenty of information that says he didn't. He did an interview that night and they asked him straight out if he knew and why he made such a statement. And he was like, he had to have been confused because he did not find out the information until the day of verdict. And it was after verdict. Now, this is very important because the judge could still order a retrial based on the fact that we don't know for sure. Was there jury misconduct? And it's not so much that they knew, but it would have been that he lied when he asked the questions, do you have any information about this case that would make it jury misconduct? Do you understand what I mean? Like, that is a problem. And I think you all agree that that would be a problem to the jury process. As far as the other issues, Trina K did an excellent job of batting them all boom, boom, boom out of the park. Judge Boriski has already said that he's not going to allow her to throw the whole case out because of untimely filing. Lori Vallow is the responsibility of most of the delay in this case. She's still trying to get the case thrown because of the May 11th date. Sorry. No, not going to happen. This case, the next case that she's facing is the attempted murder of Brandon Bardot. She's being accused of attempted murder, conspiracy for attempted murder, for planning this attempted murder with her brother Alex Cox against her ex nephew-in-law Brandon Bardot, who was married at the time to her niece Melanie. That case starts on the 12th. No, the hearing is on the 12th. Sorry. We have our last hearing in regards to that case. That would be no, today, the 14th, not the 12th, the 14th. I'm sorry. It'll be the next day, tomorrow. So we're going to have the Lori Vallow hearing and find out about the Brandon Bardot issues of whether or not this goes forward, about what witnesses are going to be on there. And Trina Kay, who is still the main prosecutor for this, has filed her state's pretrial statement saying that there is only going to be one count. It's going to be conspiracy to commit first-degree murder with a dangerous category because of planning it ahead and it being intentional, and that the offense happened on October 2nd of 2019, and that they are asking for life with the possibility of relief after 25 years. Okay. She's also presented that there was no settlement offered. She was not offered a plea deal. Lori Vallow Daybell was not even offered a plea deal in regards to this case. They're asking for 12 jurors plus 4 alternatives. And then she listed the potential witnesses and that they may be called by the state or referred to in the course of testimony in documents. In other words, some of the names listed here may only come in as the authors of reports or through video and documentation of stuff that gets entered into evidence. But she's got a ton of people from the Gilbert Police Department. There are 7 people listed there. Some of the names resident, like Nolan McDermott, we've heard that name before, definitely in there. Chandler Police Department, Detective Nathan Duncan will be back. Mesa Police Department, they've got 3 people there. They're forensic scientists coming in over evidence. Another one from the Phoenix Police Department, a forensic scientist by the name of Kyle Mueller. We've got the Department of Public Safety, Thomas Olzak, who is being listed as an expert. And our FBI investigator expert, Nicholas Balance, is coming in for the fraud. There's a drug enforcement person listed in here for the DEA by the name of Thomas D. Miller. And I didn't know there was a DEA reference in this. Can't wait to hear what this is about. There's also civilians and the victim. Brandon Bardot is on the list to testify for the state. And there are 5 other supporting civilians that are listed from the area. She's saying that the trial should take 7 to 10 days. And there's a brief statement to be read to the jury from the prosecution's side. The state alleges that in the days of 2019, Lori Vallow Daybell and her brother, Alexander Cox, conspired to commit first-degree murder of Brandon Bardot. The state further alleges that Lori Vallow's co-conspirator, Alex Cox, drove a Jeep that belonged to Lori Vallow from Rexburg, Idaho to Gilbert, Arizona. The state alleges that on the morning of October 2nd, Alex Cox shot at Brandon Bardot from the Jeep as Brandon was returning to his house at the address on Phelps Street in Gilbert, Arizona, and Brandon Bardot was not injured. The state has identified approximately 22 witnesses for this trial. 5 of those witnesses reside outside of Arizona, and that's information for the judge in regards to scheduling. The state has learned that 3 of the witnesses are not available the week of June 2nd through June 6th, and this is important because this is going to affect the trial. Witnesses Timothy Miller, and Nicholas Balance, a very important witness, that's our FBI witness, are not available to testify until Monday, June 9th. The state believes the case in chief will take approximately only 4 to 5 days. That's pretty quick. The state believes that it will conclude with all available witnesses either Wednesday, June 4th, or Thursday, June 5th. For these reasons, the state asked the court to go dark on Friday, June 6th, and potentially on Thursday, June 5th, and resume trial on June 9th when those remaining three state witnesses are available. In other words, to make the case in chief more consistent, how about we don't have court and try to drag it out on those 2 days? Like, we want to present our witnesses. Do you mind like doing 3 days and then we go dark and then we start up again on Monday? Sounds reasonable. We'll see what the judge does. I think he'll go with it. Defendant's pending motions that are listed in this case are the motion to dismiss for abuse of discretion by Judge Boreski. State, the state had already reapplied to that. You know that besides the juror misconduct, Lori Daybell has said that Judge Boreski was biased because he referred to her, well, if you want to refer yourself in that religious context comment, which was only once and was because of what she said, and he allowed it. She also said he was biased in not allowing her to have Nate Eaton or Brandon Bordeaux testify. And those were solid legal, opinions that he put out on there in decisions, and he backed them up. There was no information coming from either of them that could assist Lori Vallow. She was offered more than once to have the trial continued until she was more prepared. She was pro se, but she wanted timely filing. She wanted speedy trial. She refused every time. And the state points that out in their response. So it'll be interesting, where this goes. It depends on how the judge looks at the jury misconduct, if there was misconduct. There's several ways to handle it. Just immediately do a retrial, or hold a voir dire of the witness like they did in the Murdaugh trial, to try to see what actually interfered with any judgments that were made, to poll the jury to find out if anybody else knew about it, or if this particular witness talked about it in the deliberation room. Because if they did, it's a definite mistrial. There's been plenty of ways to deal with it besides just automatically ruling a mistrial. They could investigate a little bit further. Well, we have to wait and see what he's going to do. He's got a hearing coming up, and we should know tomorrow, hopefully. The there was information that they're trying to preclude some of the evidence relating to one of the witnesses, Tammy Lachik, and also there is a motion to preclude the media from showing the faces of testifying witnesses. They don't want to be dragged into this drama and don't want their faces shown. There are some of them that are actually on active duty that don't want to be represented and things like that. That's not unusual, especially if you've got undercover officers or people that work, that don't want the actually to be known in the community that way. Also, witnesses that are in fear of retaliation. The state is actually withdrawing their motion to use Lori Vallow's prior acts. I had thought it would be a slam dunk if they brought it in, but it is more prejudice than probative. So they did strike that they were going to use her prior acts according to Rule 404B. It is definitely going to be more prejudicial, and I can understand. Although to all of us, it makes sense. She's guilty of all these stuff. We should all know about it. Like, why are they hiding it, But it will add to a predetermination of guilt before the case. It's going to be hard to actually see the case for what it is. Each case is separate, So I can understand that. Hey, Couch. Hey, Jasper. Good to see you. Honestly, I wouldn't blame them for a retrial just to cross T's and dot. Exactly, because you don't want that. That's the whole thing with the jury process, because the jury process is actually involved in this request for the mistrial. It's almost like I'm almost pro mistrial at this point, because the jury process is so sacred. We really have to keep that pristine, the whole look of it. And just even to have a doubt that this could have happened, they need to eliminate that. I'm kind of with you there, But But I could also see how a jury could make the mistake. You're sitting in a room debating about someone's life, you'd be mentally exhausted. Exactly. I understand if he did misspeak, but that misspeak has repercussions that allow a little bit of doubt in the process to come in. And I think that's what we need to slam hard against with the jury process. You know what I mean? I mean, that's why there might be a little bit overkill in the response, so to speak. Yeah. Why would she be offered any plea? Exactly. But it is part of the state's responsibility to say whether they did or not. What I just was reading from was the pretrial statement of the state. They have to lay out the charges and what they intend to lay out as far as what they believe the case is, what their witnesses are, whether there was a plea deal, whether she turned it down, the whole thing, what kind of sentencing they're looking for. It's up to them to lay out the direction, and that's what she did. He gave her the "Are you sure?" check. There's no question about him being biased. He's been more fair than I wouldn't blame him for being offended. I don't I'm sure judges get accused of this all the time. I would be offended also, knowing how much, like you said, he went out of his way to say, "Are you sure?" To try to give her a heads up to think about stuff, like without trying to judge her. He really put himself on the line. If anything, the state could be filing that he was more biased and gave the defense more opportunity to go outside the law. I mean, seriously. The fact that she could have even presented a defense if she wanted to, when none of her witnesses gave in discovery information. It was bollocks. Those rules were very lenient on her side, trying to help deal with the situation that she was in. And for her to actually accuse this judge of being biased, well, that's just a smack in the face. It just shows you the kind of person she is. Like she's coming from a sense of entitlement that she doesn't deserve. And she talks about her rights while she's stepping all over everybody else's in due process. It's ridiculous. But it's going to be an interesting trial coming up. It definitely are. Because the facts are that trial for Brendan Bordeaux is not getting tossed. We're going to have to wait and find out what's going to happen in regards to dealing with all of the other issues in the Vallow case. You know, let me just see. What do I have here? Nope. Yeah. Oh, besides those post verdict and grounds for a new trial. Oh, one of the other things she talked about was the hearsay exclusion. She was really upset that the testimony of Tylee and Alex wasn't allowed to be brought in per their interviews, so that Alex's side of the story, wasn't in there to help show that it was self-defense. Um, she was really annoyed, but actually Alex had already confessed that he did shoot him. And that was the facts of the evidence. The interview wasn't really necessary, because it was the physical evidence of how he shot him. There was no doubt he did shoot him. It was just how he shot him. In the physical evidence after, weighed a lot, and it weighed against her. And I think that's why she was upset. She wanted Alex's story told so that the jury could hear his words about how he didn't really do it, you know. I mean, they used regular laws, Arizona rules of evidence, 8033, when they got rid of all of this stuff. But because Lori doesn't actually understand that law very well, or the law in general, she just sees it as like unfair that she didn't get to do what she wanted. She didn't have a good understanding of what was allowable and what wasn't. She just knew those statements existed and she wanted them in. Well, she had to fight. There were ways to get them in, but she didn't use them. You know? Well, she just wants to hang on the fact that it's prosecutorial misconduct and judicial misconduct because they did things that were against her. Um, you know, I'm not necessarily thinking any of that's true. I know that she feels persecuted, you know. Jury selection is going to begin on the 21st for this case, and then um they'll be distributing them on the 21st, and then they'll be doing the responses on May 29th. We're probably not going to go into this, like they said, until the beginning of June. And I don't know if they're going to delay it by a couple of days based on this new request by the state to go 2 days dark. Maybe they'll start on Monday instead. Also, the court has also put in out that they want to discuss things at the next hearing with Lori Vallow Daybell because, again, she has had difficulty in serving subpoenas or getting her witnesses in line. No discovery has been made. Of course, it's all the same as before. And failure to notify witnesses like Larry Woodcock could preclude testimony from coming in. And she doesn't like that. She didn't like that in the first trial, and it's definitely going to be the same in the second. Okay, she's not going to get leniency for any of this. She knows now, after the first trial, what can happen, and she knows the risk that she has taken. If she doesn't ask for a continuance and she's not prepared with her defense, it's her own fault. Absolutely. So that trial is set to start on the 2nd. It has its challenges, definitely. Daybell's motion is she's pushing back that they are characterizing her with unfair characterizations that prejudice the jury against her and put notions in their head. And I'm like, isn't that their job to paint the picture just like you do? You want to paint the picture that you're innocent and you're just a victim of all of this. Why can't the state paint the other picture that you're vindictive and manipulative and in control of all of this? We'll see. But legally and strategically, there's a lot going on here. She still has to adjust with the risk of that self-representation. She still plans on representing herself. We've heard nothing that she won't. She complains loudly about media influence and that contributes to jury bias. Although when the Arizona jury pool was actually questioned, not many knew who she was. Although after now having a conviction in Arizona and everybody Googling the name once that happened, I'm sure they do now. It will be a totally different situation for the second trial, a much more aware population. So we shall see what happens then. What Judge Boreski ends up on doing on everything in regards to his current trial going forward, and whether or not he addresses the other issues for the post-verdict trial issues and motions that came forward. Now, it's Judge Boreski's style with this particular defendant to deal with the cases together. He has in multiple hearings discussed things in both separately and together, and he identifies them by the case number when he goes to talk about it. And he'll probably separate the hearing into two parts if he chooses to address that motion for retrial, or the motion to dismiss the charges based on his misconduct. That's already been just like denied. Forget it. So the charges haven't been dropped. That's for sure. Let me check the chat before we move on to our other friend. Hey, Mitt, she is a freaking lunatic, just grasping at non-existent straws. And she's fighting for another, not to have another life sentence. I mean, she's never getting out. Well, she's just so adamant that people are judging her, like she wants to be portrayed as something different. Remember, she said she was representing herself to tell her side of the story, but did she? She didn't do a good job representing it, I have to say. It was pretty rough. Well, we're going to have to be dealing with Lori Vallow Daybell for just a bit longer, maybe. Just a bit longer. Like, she got another trial, and maybe even another one after that if she gets this retrial. Well, Well, there we go. So if you guys don't have any questions, Kohberger or Vallow Daybell, let's move on to Paulo Caniero. And yeah, lucky us. Sorry, not sorry there, Mitt. Okay, this case I've been following for quite some time. And May 8th, we did have a pretrial hearing in the case of Paulo Caniero. It was held with Superior Court Judge Mark C. Lemieux in Monmouth County, one of the top judge, by the way, in one of the top judges in the state. Like this man, Lemieux. Not because the name is French and I can't say it, but he's just very balanced. He's a smart cookie. Um, this the focus of the hearing for May 8th was on many motions that Canero's defense attorney, who is new because the defense attorney before got a change of status and promotion, and Monica Mastroloni took over. And she is now, after all of these years, looking at everything, and she is attacking every significant piece of evidence in this case. Now, just to refresh your memory, this is the case, what he is being accused of, amongst other things like insurance fraud and just being an all right nasty person and doing some bad things in the books and fraud and things like that. Stealing from companies, his family companies that he worked for. Paul Caniero is being charged with the murder of his brother's wife, and 2 children at a mansion in Colts Neck, and that he covered it up by burning it down, and that he then went to his house and attempted to burn his own house down with his wife and children inside. He got out. They thankfully did get out, but he is being accused of causing that arson to cover up the crime, to make it look as if the whole family was being targeted, like some kind of mob movie. So that's the case. They were not called to the residence when they heard firearms, because in Colts Neck, in the middle of the night, people heard firearm, shots. Yes, his brother was shot. His wife was shot. They were all stabbed. The children were stabbed. And the house was set on fire. The brother was found out on the lawn, shot in the back. The mother was found coming up the basement stairs. And the children were found in different areas. I believe one in the kitchen and perhaps one near the stairs. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check on that. But they were stabbed. And there was lots of evidence that was left behind. But the shots happened at night, the middle of the night. And many of the neighbors had reported hearing shots, but because it's deer season and because it was close to dawn, they didn't really think that much about it. They're used to it. But there were many that recalled it. And some, I think there is even one evidence of somebody calling in that they heard something. Now, then there was the smell of smoke and the fire. And then much later in the day, I think towards noon, the EMTs and fires, they reported and showed up. And the house was pretty well engulfed by that. That's when they found the body on the front lawn and in certain condition, and the body's inside. Then they got the alarm of the same thing happening at the other brother's house, and the investigation took over. But what they're testifying against, and all of these motions that Monica Mastrolone, the defense attorney, has actually put out, is that she is bringing into question this evidence, the testimony from the state's fire expert regarding that it's arson. We know those fires were set, but how do you know? But she's actually questioning the methodology and how they tested that it was arson, even though they have evidence of him in the vicinity with gas, turning off cameras. But do what you got to do, defense attorney. I mean, I give you credit. You're earning your pay. The ballistics evidence, the gun, the bullets, evidence related to Canero's alleged motive. Well, the motive is obvious. He got caught stealing. I mean, he's not exactly a pillar of piety. He was actually getting paid under the table by his own brother's company, paying his wife because he was defrauding the disability system. He was on disability, but he was able to earn pay through these businesses and working every day. Evidence obtained through what the defense claims was an overly broad warrant. They didn't list specifically everything they were looking for. We see this often in defense cases, and sometimes it works, but most times it doesn't. But we'll see what the judge does about this. Evidence collected without a warrant, specifically. Now, here's the thing, that there is a DVR security system that was removed from Canero's garage, and it is the one that actually he gave permission for them to take. And now they're saying they shouldn't have used it because now they're using the tape from it that shows that he turned the cameras off for security at his house right before he set the fires to his own home. It literally shows him coming up and turning the device off. But his testimony, which proves he was lying about there not being any security footage on how the fire started at his house, was that there was faultiness with the system and it had been going on and off by itself for some time. So they are challenging his actual statement and showing this piece of evidence, and this is why the defense wants to get rid of it. And I don't blame them, but she's doing a good job. So that's really going to be a great hearing. The next one coming up when we go through. They discussed all of the arguments, but the judge didn't really make a decision on most of it. Okay. He outlined a timeline for responses for most of this after hearing the arguments of the defense. Okay, he said that the prosecution has to reply to all of these motions concerning the ballistic evidence and the search warrant and the DVR footage by May 28th this month. And hearings on those particular motions he's scheduled for June 3rd. So we'll have it, we'll hear more about that then. And then the other two issues about the arson expert and the financial motive of stealing from everybody, getting caught and doesn't want to like go to jail, that's going to happen. They have to actually report everything by June. They have to do their written responses back to the court and to the defense by June 5th. And we're going to have hearings on June 10th for those two issues. So Judge Lameau is on it. Like, he's definitely, bringing it forward. They did get their change in regards to a more time. And now that she's filed all of this against the evidence, I could see why she needed more time. We were supposed to already go to trial this month. Well, no, September 8th now, giving the defense time to wrap up all these arguments since there was a new defense attorney appointed. But this goes back so far that the judge himself is on a fast track to want to get all of this resolved. He's not going to go back over things. If it's not new, he's not going to let the defense address it. If the previous defense attorneys have already used any of this or come at any of this, I mean, they did attack the DNA testing. Remember the Stritex technology that was able to find minute DNA evidence that mixed both Paul Caniero's blood and the blood of one of the victims, I believe the niece or the nephew, on his clothing that they recovered from his own home. They wanted that out, saying the technology had not been used before in a New Jersey court, so it wasn't coming in. They had long hearings about that last year that we went through, very detailed. They brought the guy who wrote the code to do the analysis from New Zealand, the head of the company, over to speak in this hearing. And they were long and drawn out. And we heard from experts in other states that are using the technology and labs that have used it. It is actually a well-defined methodology and well-defined testing. It just hasn't been used in court before, but it does have scientific credibility in the community. So it's in. Judge Lameau finally said it's in. The technology itself is sound and it can be presented. So the defense lost that battle. Items that were collected, like some of the evidence, just to keep in mind before we go to the hearing that they have, is the bloodstained clothing we just talked about, a latex glove, a 9mm Sig Sauer handgun, and 9mm bullets. DNA analysis found Caniero's DNA mixed with that of the nephew. That's what I was just talking about. Caniero's passport was found in a backpack in one of his vehicles, as if he was willing to leave everything behind. In surveillance footage from the DVR system, showing him approaching the camera at 1 a.m. on November 20th of 2018, before the system lost power. Caniero claimed he was home all night, but other footage shows his SUV leaving the driveway of his home at 2 a.m. the same day the murders occurred. And there is also some evidence from the cameras outside his brother Keith's house that show a figure that looks very much like him skulking around one of the back entrances and dealing with some of the power to the house. Victims' details in the crime scene I don't know if I want to go over all of that yet. We can do another one on that when it gets closer to the trial and talk about like what they found. But basically, there was no doubt that the victims were murdered. They were shot in a way that could not be self-inflicted, and they were stabbed. And the whole house was annihilated, and then the fire happened. So, I mean, it's pretty brutal, you know. Um, there is also testimony from the business associate at the job, employee rather, um, like an administrator type position, who wrote checks and things, who had personal information that actually attributes to the motive, understands the dealings of the brothers and that there had been some issue. There is also another brother involved who was not in business with the two, but that had talked to Keith Caniero, the brother who is deceased, in regards to some of the trouble that has been going on in some of the suspected things, and kind of gave him a heads up that he would be firing his brother for stealing from the company and not being honest, that he's been trying to help him, but he's doing some shady stuff. And so there was conversation about it. There are other people that will be able to testify to the possible motive in this case, you know? Yeah, backpack in the car kind of leads to a bug out bag. I do agree, Jen. I do. I do. You know? So basically, the next steps is the judge has set the schedule for these hearings that are coming up about the admissibility of evidence, uh, and that'll be taken care of in June. And then we'll have our pre-trial hearings all the way through July and August, because we are scheduled for jury selection starting on September 8th. Okay. Unfortunately for me, and therefore for you, full transcripts of all the filings are not available. They're not made public, not even of the hearing. I have to wait on the reporting of reporters that do interviews with the people involved to get the information, because none of the documentation is available in the criminal courts in New Jersey until after the case is done. But you know me, I'm not waiting till it's over to talk about it. Mm-mm, mm-mm. This has been going on since 2018, and I ain't waiting. No. Mm-mm. Now, they wanted to change the venue, and I think we talked about this. Well, they presented evidence that it was such a hot case. Everybody's talking about it. I assure you, nobody, as far as I know, nobody but myself is talking about it out here on the internet. I don't see it anywhere, really. It's important to me. I'm talking about it because it's interesting. Because he has done everything he can to delay it since 2018. He's used every trick in the book. His defense attorneys have been awesome. I'll grant him that. They've done everything, including these last ditch efforts, including trying to get the venue changed out of the state almost, because it's been so popular. But when the judge looked at the evidence that they submitted to support it, he said, you do realize that most of these transactions were in 2018, 2019, and 2020. And nobody's really talking about it unless we have a hearing now. And that other cases are much more popular. It's still held in Monmouth County. And we're just going to have to just trust that people can be unbiased about it. We're not moving it. We're not moving it. And I don't blame him. Judge Lamont's had this for a long time. I think he wants to settle it. Why would he give it up? You know? Seriously. But to submit all of that stuff, and the judge does, I mean, Judge was pretty savvy. He does his own search, and like everything coming up is old. Seriously. And then they used all of these negative comments that people made on Facebook. And the judge actually told the defense attorney, he said, nobody listens to trolls on the internet. People just sit behind their keyboards and say things. It doesn't mean anything to a reasonable juror. That opinion doesn't matter to them. And he's right. He's right. Just because somebody says, I think Paul Caniero did it, doesn't mean it biased the jury. There's plenty of people that think he did it. Anyway, the whole thing that happened on May 8th was really centered upon all of the stuff the defenses bring through to try to get rid of. And basically the state just sitting there rolling their eyes, thinking about all the work they got to do now to try to push back against it at this last ditch effort, because there's a new attorney involved, to try to get the case against Paul Caniero to go away. It's not going anywhere. This case is not going anywhere. I don't think they're going to be very successful, but we'll see. The hearings will tell us, you know. All right. So let me just check for questions. Oh, you got kicked to the beginning of the stream? That's very odd. I didn't see anything happen on this end. Did anybody else? I mean, it doesn't look like it from the chat. Sorry about that, Grace. Maybe it's a flux in the internet. I agree with you, Mipit, on the nickname for Caniero, but like I'm trying to stay unbiased. I really want to see justice prevail here. I want to see a good, solid case. Yep. It does kind of suck that I have to wait to get those papers and jump through hoops for them. We'll see. I'm going to pay for the case afterwards. I want the transcripts from the trial because in them will be the sidebars, and I want to know like the back end. This one's personal for me because it's so close, and because I've just watched all the delays, and it just seems like one after the other after the other. And like the last straw with me is like trying to say that the jury is like, can you hold 1 second? 1 second. Oh my god. I am so sorry for that. Real life. My dog got out and I did not know it, and they just brought my dog back. And I am very, very grateful that a very kind neighbor actually took care of that I knew nothing about it. I didn't even hear him in the backyard barking because I had headphones on. Ah! So there was a close call. I live near a very busy street, so I'm a little taken aback. Hmm. No, I was muted the whole time. I said I was leaving for a second. Yeah, who could read our that's very funny because all the noise that I make, that wasn't actually me talking. I think I explained this the other day. Like if I move it all, it moves the avatars. That's why sometimes when we're doing the live trial and I'm muted in the corner and the trial's going on, you see my lips going, but I might be moving across the room and it's picking up sound. So that was actually me going to the door to answer the door. All of that lip, that wasn't me talking without you guys, you know. But it would be funny if you could read lips. I wonder what it would say, even though I'm just walking, I'm not actually saying anything. And no, Shill, I was muted. I did say that before. You probably just didn't hear me. I said, oh, excuse me for a minute. I did leave quick. And I do apologize, everybody, but it wasn't really time for me to tell you what was going on. Anyway, dog is safe. Everybody's a little upset, but the dog is safe. And that was the issue. So, uh, Mippy says, I want to know how this is going to go. It does sound interesting, especially why all the delaying tactics. Exactly, because there's so much evidence about his motive and what he actually did. He actually prepared, he actually planned it all out. And it's very obvious. And so I think he's upset about the evidence that he left behind because he really thought he covered his tracks. And to find out that it's still so damn obvious what he did, I bet you he's just like very verklempt about the whole thing. And that's how the justice system works. I mean, defense has to really go for every angle they can. It's just been just also COVID delayed it a whole bunch. Like, it was horrible here. We shut everything down. Our cases in the judicial system here in the state of New Jersey are well behind years, Yeah, upset he got caught. No, it wasn't you, Maggie. I do apologize again. I'm sorry, anybody that got confused. I said it really quick and then I muted. Yep, just like every other criminal. He's so upset he got caught. He's like, how could you think it's me? Like, really? I was so clever. I was definitely so clever. Oh, happy birthday to your oldest, didn't you? That's a very cute emoji. Yeah, are you dancing there, Rocket Couch, over in Twitch? Are you shaking it at me? What are you doing over there? I see you. I see you. Anyway, I'm excited about the Caniero case finally coming to trial on the 8th, but we'll see. I'm also excited to hear what happens in these hearings, and I'll keep you abreast of that. We'll do an update. But in the meantime, I don't know. Is it a vibrating couch? It's vibrating something over there, Mrs. Cassandra. Can we can't see it over here in YouTube, but I can see the little, and it's little, so it's hard to actually tell. But it does look like he's shaking something at me. I'll tell you that. Or doing like a little dance, like it's all that. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But on that, if you guys don't have any other questions, it's the man. Oh, it's the man titties being released. Oh my goodness. The man ones, huh? Okay, here we go. Couch is hysterical. It is definitely hysterical. Okay. All right. So if we don't have any other questions in regards to these three cases, I just want to remind you tomorrow, full coverage of Karen Reed if the trial goes on. There was rumor that perhaps she wasn't like feeling up to it today. And she said, let's see how it goes. Maybe we'll just delay. And they just canceled the whole day. Like, I don't know what's going on. But we don't know for sure because all they said was, unavoidable circumstances. Could have been anything. So we got an unplanned day off. I know I appreciated it. I feel rested. I feel rested and ready for the rest of the week. And was really happy to be able to do another update for some of the other cases that we're following. And very happy to report that tomorrow is going to be P. Diddy. We're going to go over that trial that started on Monday. And we're going to go over 3 days of it. I'll be able to tell you what happened, how it went with jury selection, what our first witnesses and evidence were like. And thank you again to Arnold for providing a tool that makes that so much easier for me instead of watching 20 videos and trying to read documents. I mean, the federal case, for those of you interested for Sean Combs, is available on Pacer. Federal cases, criminal cases usually are. In New York's federal cases are there, but not their regular state cases. And I'm following so many New York cases. Like, you can get information on the federal case against Luigi Mangione, but not on the state case. And it's hard to get the ones on Pennsylvania. Oh, there's Arnold. Everybody, thank you, Arnold, for making Bear's life easier, which gets information to them faster. So thank you very much. Well, that tool's amazing. I've been using it all day, Arnold. It's been really, really great. So I will see you all tomorrow for the trial if you're following, or in the evening for another update. P. Diddy updates will be on Wednesday and Friday nights until that trial's over. And it's not expected that trial is going to be that long, actually, if it keeps going the way it's going. So there we go. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of argument against AI, But used appropriately, it can actually just make your life just a little quicker and a little easier, as long as you're not depending on it to be like a solid fact. For direction and research, it's absolutely amazing. I guess it's just like all technology. Okay, here goes my Black Mirror Charlie Brooker byline. It's not the tech that's bad, it's the people to use it. Okay? With every story of modern technology on how it can make your life better or easier or solve some problem, it usually goes wrong when it gets into the hands of human beings who are both good and bad at all times in how they use it, right? This is what I love about Black Mirror. We'll have another Black Mirror episode on May 23rd, by the way. We'll be doing episode 3. On that, I'm out of here. Sorry for those of you who just joined, but that's my hour and a half, and I'm going to go get some more rest and having to deal with Karen Reed tomorrow, and hopefully seeing some of you there. And just as always, if you have questions in regards to anything we talked about tonight or we didn't talk about, or any of the other cases we're following, or even if we're not, please hit the comment section. I get great views, and you all are here to talk to me in the live chat, but nobody ever wants to talk to me on the back of the videos, and I'm feeling slighted. I'm feeling slighted a little bit, people. Yeah, so help that algorithm. Hit that like. If you're not already subscribed, that's the free part. Why not? Somebody want to explain that to me? Why not? Tell me why not. What can I do to improve? How can I get you over here? Anyway, like, share, comment, and I'll be seeing you all tomorrow. And thanks for spending some time with me tonight, because I sure enjoyed it. Who wouldn't want the computer from Benoit? Really, it's a fascinating computer, but look what they did with it. They all became, master of the universe. Not exactly a good look, So, nope, AI is taking over. No one listened to the Terminator. Exactly. Yep, exactly. Yep. Night, everybody. Keep that humor. I want to be that rich. I'd like the house. Seriously, Mrs. Cassandra. Forget the computer. Just give me that house. Man, oh man, was that gorgeous. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for keeping me company. Talk to you soon.